So D'Angelo Russell may be having his best month of his career. Even so, it's the most D'Angelo Russell month you could possibly have, because while there are those 30-point games and high 20-point games, and of course the night against the Lakers that everybody on Twitter wants to talk about, there are still the inefficient games, the nights where he'll go 3 for 12 from the field and get 5 turnovers, or 6 turnovers against OKC with only 4 assists. Like, D'Lo he's just kind of madness to watch night to night. He really is. Some nights he looks like a not as good James Harden. Other nights he looks like a slow point guard who just can't really get by anybody. But he has figured it out lately, and between the jumper going in and all that, I have to ask myself, like, what is going to happen to D'Angelo Russell on the open market? When you look at what the Nets want, given that they already committed to Dinwiddie and they got Caris LeVert coming back, and both of those guys are ball handlers, on top of which teams out there are going to really like D'Angelo Russell. Is there going to be somebody who throws him a little bit too much money? The cap is going up to, I believe, $109 million, but at the same time, I don't think we're in the days anymore where guys who are just decent are going to get severely overpaid. So there's a whole lot to discuss here. And the first thing I wanted to look at was, what is the going rate for average NBA point guards, okay? These are just 4 guys I looked at. Reggie Jackson making $17 million. Eric Bledsoe, $15. Jeff Teague, $19. Goran Dragic, $18. So that may be the world that D'Angelo Russell is looking at. And perhaps even a little less, because I think you could argue all 4 of those guys, when they signed their contracts, they were like established players. Like, there wasn't much more doubt of how good they were, except in the case of Reggie Jackson, perhaps, but Detroit got kind of excited when they traded for him, and you could argue he's been a little bit of a disappointment. But, you know, is there a chance that D'Lo is looking at about $12 to $13 million a year and potentially a little more than that? Yeah, I could picture it. I could picture a few teams talking themselves into D'Lo, because this could be another one of those instances where it's the high draft pick who still does a lot of the things that people were excited about for him coming into the league, and then he gets here and he's here for a few seasons and he's had some injuries. Give him the break there. You realize, okay, maybe he's not like amazing, but there's definitely something to work with, and if he's in a good environment, good coach, good teammates, then I could picture D'Lo becoming one of the better point guards in the NBA. But it's a matter of just fine-tuning all those consistency problems and perhaps getting a little bit more athletic for him. But before we start looking at teams that I think could talk themselves into him, let's talk about the Nets for a little bit. So a few things have been said about their offseason in terms of their cap space, and again, re-signed Dinwiddie. They got Caris LeVert coming back here soon. There may be a world in which Spencer Dinwiddie and Caris LeVert and then shooting is better than those two with D'Angelo Russell. And that's not to say that between Joe Harris and random other shooters that the Nets could get in the offseason are better than D'Lo, but it just might be a fit kind of a thing, right? Because if you have 3 guys who all need the ball, it could be successful because all 3 of them can shoot at this point if Dinwiddie's shooting is going to hold up. But still, all 3 of those guys want the ball. They're not just going to play off of it all day long, right? So that is something the Nets are going to have to manage. Among those 3, Caris is the best. I still think Dinwiddie is better than D'Lo, mainly just because he's more consistent. I mean, for all the talk of how good D'Lo has been since Caris went out, Dinwiddie is right there with him. So, yeah. Also, I think Dinwiddie and Caris have more potential defensively than Russell does as well. They're also both just a little taller. But still, there's a lot of games left, so D'Lo could end up making this decision just a little more difficult. They're at $54 million committed right now. I would say, other than D'Lo, there's no one else. Well, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. So him and Rondae. Everybody else, you're pretty comfortable with letting them walk. And let's say D'Lo is back on this team for $14 million a year, we'll just say. That takes you to 68. So at that point, you're going to have, 78, 88, 98, 108, about $40 million still to play with between re-signing whoever you may want to re-sign, going out and trying to get somebody. I don't think the Nets have a chance at a max player. I do think they have a chance at someone like Tobias Harris. And if you wanted to talk yourself into a world of Dinwiddie, Caris, D'Lo, and then Tobias at the 4, I mean, it's an idea. But at the same time, say if the Nets actually did get somebody like Tobias Harris, and then you had him playing like the 3 spot, and then you will create a scenario where DeMarre Carroll was as good as he was last year, right? Let's say you can have DeMarre at the 4, then you have Dinwiddie and Caris, and those are your 4 guys. Then you got Jared Allen there, and then in terms of who they draft this offseason, I don't know where it's going to be. I don't even know where the pick's going to be right now. I don't know. I might talk myself into that sort of an idea more so than D'Lo, because I just think the flow of the team makes a teeny bit more sense, because Tobias is he's a better player than D'Lo, period, but he's definitely a better off-ball player, and that team has more size and more potential on defense. But of course, that's like the super perfect scenario happening, and that always is not the case in the NBA, especially because we shouldn't assume that, for as exciting as the Nets have been, and they've won 7 in a row and all that, we shouldn't just assume they're just going to be a great free agency destination, right? Like, they could probably get some decent dudes, but I don't know if they're going to get anybody good enough to where you're just comfortable with being like, okay, D'Lo, see ya. So yeah, it'll all be very interesting stuff. Also, I could picture a world where some team just offers D'Lo like $19 million a year. And if I was the Nets, I would think long and hard about letting him go at that point. But of course, there's a lot of time left in this season. If we look at some teams who I think could get themselves into the D'Angelo Russell sweepstakes, this is assuming he's not like traded mid-season, by the way, which I would not totally rule out. There's Phoenix. That's been talked about a lot on Twitter. I don't love the fit with him and Devin Booker, because I don't think D'Lo can really play off the ball like that. I mean, he's had one of the higher usage rates in the NBA for the past couple seasons, and I just don't know if he can go 2 or 3 minutes without touching the ball, right? And between Ayton post-ups, TJ Warren ISOs, Devin Booker ISOs, and pick and rolls, that could be the case sometimes. I think that team could be suited for a veteran point guard, so I don't know if he's really the right option there. The Orlando Magic have been desperate for some scoring at point guard. They are going to draft somebody, of course, and it could make sense for them to go with a perimeter player who can put some points up. They are going to have to re-sign Vucevic, but besides that, they have a lot of one-year deals between 1-year deals after this season is up, between Augustine, Simmons, and they got some dudes making about $1.5 million. They also got Mozgov's contract. If you were really committed to D'Lo, I feel like you could perform some cap gymnastics with the extra $9 million you're going to have from the cap going up, to where you probably could just get there after re-signing Vucevic. And yeah, I think those are the 2 teams that I noticed immediately. After those 2, I mean, who the hell knows what's going to happen with the Pelicans this offseason if Anthony Davis does not accept the Supermax. Also, I could kind of picture Julius declining his player option because of how good he's been this year, which could open the door for somebody else. I don't know. There's a lot of teams out there, and who the hell knows with the NBA offseasons anymore. I think the most interesting part of this is still what the Nets want to do, because look, between D'Lo, LeVert, and Dinwiddie, those are 3 good players, but you could argue the fit is not perfect between the 3 of them. I mean, I've said this a million times on Twitter, but like Dinwiddie and Russell, there's been a lot of time when those 2 on the floor together has not been very good. Now, it's been better lately, partially because both of them are going nuclear from 3. But these are things you got to manage if you're the Nets, so it'll be very interesting to see what comes out on the other side here.